I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, On the Clock. Negotiations continue as the U.S. draws closer to a default on its debt. We have team coverage. Threat from Tehran. What Iran is saying about its newly unveiled missile. Let justice and peace flow. The Holy Father releases a message about an upcoming day of prayer for the planet. And center of attention, why visitors are flocking to a religious sisters monastery in rural Missouri. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, the U.S. could default on its debt in a week. That is, unless President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy can strike a deal. The major sticking points remain over budget cuts and a debt ceiling timeline. Meantime, both Republicans and Democrats continue to blame each other for the potential economic crisis.
And now we have the highest debt at any time to American history. So I just think it's common sense, it's reasonable and it's rational that we spend less next year than we spend this year.
It does appear increasingly likely that House Republicans want a dangerous default, they want to crash the economy, and they want to trigger a job-killing recession.
With a June 1st deadline looming, Democrats tell EWTN News Nightly raising the debt ceiling should not be tied to spending cuts.
Because it is completely reckless and irresponsible to hold the entire U.S. economy hostage for programming and spending that had already been authorized. And these are really just to pay for votes that Republicans have already made.
I don't believe that we should be using the debt ceiling as a negotiating tool that puts Americans' livelihoods at the very brink of the line. So I think Republicans need to be responsible. They need to lift the debt ceiling.
As for Republicans, they tell EWTN News Nightly that Democrats will not agree to spend less.
You know, the reality is that this is probably one of the most conservative debt ceiling increases when you think about taking it back to baseline 22 and only doing a 1% increase from there. You know, this looks at a savings of almost $4.8 trillion.
I mean, it's really the Senate's move at this point, and it's obvious that Senator Schumer doesn't have the votes for what he wants to do, which is just spend more money, print another credit card, and go deeper in debt. So we've been the responsible ones here.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is confident a deal can be reached in the next couple of days. Members will then have 72 hours to read the bill and get back to Washington for votes next week, likely Tuesday or Wednesday. Our President Joe Biden has made a deliberate decision to go quiet as his team gets down to the wire in the debt limit talks. This, according to White House officials. President Biden has intentionally stayed out of the spotlight, but this afternoon that changed in a hurry. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. Today, President Joe Biden held an event in the Rose Garden. It was to introduce who he hopes will be the next principal military advisor to the commander-in-chief. But first, he brought up the debt limit.
Now, I want to be clear that the negotiations we're having with Speaker McCarthy is about the outlines of what the budget will look like, not about default. It's about competing visions for America.
And as debt ceiling talks are pushed to the brink.
But Speaker McCarthy and I have a very different view of who should bear the burden of additional efforts to get our fiscal house in order.
Moments later,
I have the honor of introducing my nominee to be the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Charles Q. Brown, Jr. General, welcome.
Also today, President Biden released a statement on the anniversary of George Floyd's death. The May 25th, 2020 killing of the 46-year-old by Minneapolis police officers sparked protests throughout the country. President Biden writing, George Floyd's murder exposed for many what black and brown communities have long known and experienced, that we must make a whole of society commitment to ensure that our nation lives up to its founding promise of fair and impartial justice for all under the law. Meanwhile, during an event on Twitter marred by technical glitches, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis makes it official.
To voters who are participating in this primary process, my pledge to you is this. If you nominate me, you can set your clock to January 20th, 2025 at high noon, because on the west side of the U.S. Capitol, I will be taking the oath of office as the 47th President of the United States. No excuses. I will get the job done.
President Biden took a swipe at Governor DeSantis with this video.
That was something that we were very proud to do.
So I would embrace proposals, like Paul Ryan offered.
Now, tomorrow afternoon, the White House hosts a couple of championship college basketball teams, and then it's on to the Memorial Day weekend already. And whether any debt deal, back to the debt deal now, whether any deal is approved before a quickly approaching June 1st deadline, also known as the X date, of course, remains to be seen. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Chinese hackers are seeking to disrupt communications between the United States and countries in the Asian Pacific region. A new report from Microsoft says Beijing-backed hackers targeted critical infrastructure organizations in Guam and other U.S. areas. China calls the claims, quote, disinformation. South Korea has conducted its first launch of a commercial-grade satellite, this seen as an important step in Seoul's race to monitor any possible threat from North Korea. Currently, South Korea uses U.S. satellites to monitor its neighbor. South Korea also held a massive live-fire military drill with the United States. The exercises took place near North Korea's border. Pyongyang responded, saying that it will not tolerate what it says is a rehearsal for a hostile invasion. The joint military drills included stealth fighter jets, attack helicopters, and multiple rocket launch systems. So Iran has unveiled its new ballistic missile. Officials say the missile can evade radar detection and penetrate enemy defense systems. The missile itself weighs close to 3,300 pounds and can travel around 1,200 miles. The missile has been developed amid increasing tensions with the West. Well, a new report says Ukraine is close to running out of money amid the war with Russia, and neighboring Poland is asking countries to assist and give more aid. And joining us now is Adrian Kubicki, Poland's Consul General in New York right now. Adrian, great to be with you. Tell us why Poland feels it's so important that Ukraine receive more funding.
Well, first of all, this war is not over, and it's never going to be over until the very last Russian troop leaves the Ukrainian soil. We believe that no in-between solution can be implemented until Ukraine is completely free and left as a sovereign and independent country. And we should do whatever it takes. Ukraine has proven already that they know how to utilize the help and they know how to use the help that has been provided to them throughout this passing almost year and a half of the invasion and their defense. And we should continue to do so. I think we are very close to achieve a major success as this coalition of supporters of Ukraine. But we need to give them a couple of more months to prove that they can finally defeat their country and defend their country and finally regain the independence and sovereignty for their country. I understand that for many commentators and perhaps even for a certain portion of the public opinion, it seems not very relevant to continuously invest money in that Ukraine counteroffensive or simply the defense. But there is no other choice for stopping Russia. And again, our perspective is that if any solution should be implemented, which stops that leaving Russia with, I don't know, portion of Ukrainian territory or other solution, it will only enhance Russia to go for more. Maybe not immediately, but very soon, and create this direct threat to United States of America, to Poland, to other countries of the Western world.
Adrian, we've been hearing a lot about the spring offensive, and according to several reports, it's been delayed because of a lack of funding. What more do you know about this, if anything? Well, first of all, we might have expected a little bit more of a progress, obviously, since this offensive was supposed to start in the spring. And even though perhaps Ukrainians are not able to achieve that due to lack of equipment, lack of sufficient amount of help, I think they're still quite successful in pushing back Russian invaders. I think that if you compare their activities to the activities of Russians, I think they're still
ahead of Russian invasion. So that they're proving that they're able to move forward and they're able to win this war. But if we are providing them with help, it doesn't make much of a sense providing them with only a portion of what they need. We need to provide them with everything they need to finally win this war, including everything what they are calling upon. And, Poland was very much in favor of sending the tanks, sending the post-Soviet fighter jets. Perhaps next steps should be taken in order to helping them. We should not stop at this point, spending a lot of effort already helping them, because this will eventually mean that they will struggle with winning with Russians. And they must win for the sake of their independence and their sovereignty, but also ours. Not ours, Polish, but also other countries of Western world.
We have so much more we could talk about, but we have to leave it right there. Adrian Kubicki, thank you so much for your time, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including Let Justice and Peace Flow. The Vatican has released its theme for this year's World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation. Plus, how a Catholic organization saved a group of nuns in Sudan. Cardinal Sean O'Malley, appointed a leader in the Vatican's efforts to fight clergy abuse, is among those named in a new lawsuit in Boston. The suit alleges Cardinal O'Malley and 5 other archdiocesan officials failed to properly supervise a vice principal who allegedly abused 3 teens at a Catholic high school. And while the claims are not directly related to clergy abuse, the case is creating a stir at the Vatican. EWTN News Vatican correspondent Colin Flynn has more.
Cardinal Sean O'Malley has been at the forefront of the Catholic Church's fight against child sexual abuse, leading the charge of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors since 2014. This is a Vatican group established by Pope Francis that oversees the Catholic Church's safeguarding measures across the globe. Well, this month, 3 people in the Archdiocese of Boston sued Cardinal O'Malley in a new lawsuit for what they claim was a failure to properly oversee and supervise a vice principal at a Catholic high school in Boston. They alleged victims, who are being referred to as John Doe's 1, 2, and 3 to protect their identities, claimed that while they were attending Arlington Catholic High School, the vice principal, Stephen Biagioni, sexually abused them during detention periods. They say this happened between 2011 and 16, when they were between the ages of 15 and 17 years old. Now, in 2016, the vice principal, Mr. Biagioni, he was suspended from his duties at the school and placed on leave because of what was called an unspecified incident. This lawsuit claims that Cardinal O'Malley, Archbishop of Boston since 2003, and 5 other defendants in the Archdiocese are to blame for allegedly allowing the vice principal to groom the teenagers and abuse them. Simply put, they are claiming the Cardinal should have known about the vice principal's behaviour and done something sooner. Cardinal O'Malley has not publicly commented on these allegations. However, a spokesperson for the Boston Archdiocese, while declining to comment on this specific lawsuit, told local media that the Boston Archdiocese took appropriate steps back in 2016 when it first learned of the allegations against the vice principal. They say that the matter was reported to the appropriate law enforcement agencies and child welfare authorities at the time. In Rome, Colin Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the Vatican also released a theme for the World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation in September. The theme is Let Justice and Peace Flow. The Holy Father says that he chose it based on the words of the prophet Amos. Let justice flow like a river, righteousness like a never-ending stream. The World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation takes place September 1st. Joining us now is Tomas Insua, Executive Director of the Laudato Si Movement. Tomas, great to see you again. Can you tell us about some of the other highlights from the news conference today?
Yes, thanks, Tracy. Well, yes, we had a wonderful press conference today in which the Holy Father presented his annual message for the season of creation, which is this special time in September when all Christian churches celebrate God's creation. The message is, as usual, a strong appeal for an ecological conversion, as St. John Paul II called for over 2 decades ago. It's an appeal for us people of faith, us Catholics, to change our hearts, to undergo this conversion, to repent from our ecological sins, as the Pope writes, quoting Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, that we need to transform the way we relate to God's creation, that this wonderful gift, the sacred gift we got from God, we're mistreating it and abusing it, and just requires an urgent change. Anyways, the Pope's message elaborates on a few, let's say, specifics, and it's basically an encouragement to leave this special time in September at its fullest.
And Tomas, I know you spoke at the conference and you drew a comparison between the leadership of some global leaders and that of Pope Francis. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yes, indeed. The Pope has in his message very strong words about the status quo, the business as usual. In particular, he has a word for the COP28 summit, the UN climate summit that happens annually, about implementing the Paris Climate Agreement. And he has strong words calling on world leaders to stop fossil fuel extraction and exploration and expansion, which is in direct contradiction with the Paris Agreement. Again, building on the legacy of his successors, John Paul II, many years ago, 2-3 decades ago, already called out fossil fuels as a main driver of this crisis. And basically, the Pope again puts himself completely at odds with many of the world's leaders, ranging regardless of where they stand in the geopolitical divide. We see most world governments to continue expanding fossil fuel expansion, especially the wealthiest countries. So very strong call from Pope Francis, basically in line with what scientists and so many others are calling for, just commonsensical approach to care for our kids, our grandchildren, and the poorest who have to pay the biggest, let's say, the worst consequences of this climate crisis.
Tomas, before I let you go, we don't have that much time left, but I know it's Laudato Si week. So can you tell us briefly about this initiative and what you're focusing on this year?
Yes, Laudato Si week is at full swing, and we're seeing countless film screenings of the Letter, this wonderful movie about the encyclical letter, Laudato Si, which basically is being screened in local parishes, communities, schools, etc., all across the globe. We're seeing amazing action. It's all accessible from the website of Laudato Si Week. Fantastic opportunity to dive deeper into these teachings of the Church on care for creation, and an opportunity for local communities to actually start implementing concrete change to bring about this much-needed healing for our common home, for God's creation.
Well, Tomas, so great to be with you. Thank you so much. God bless.
God bless. Thanks, Tracy.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, by the grace of God, how a group of nuns were saved amid a gunfight in Sudan. Plus, why a monastery in rural Missouri is attracting scores of pilgrims. A Catholic organization has rescued 3 sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The Vulnerable People Project responded to an alert that one of the nuns, Sister Christine, sent out and rescued the 3 and around 800 other people from the Sudanese capital of Khartoum, which has been ravaged by the fighting in the civil war. Well, finally tonight, when the Benedictine Sisters of Mary, Queen of Apostles, exhumed the body of their foundress earlier this month, they discovered the unexpected. 4 years after her death and burial in a simple wooden coffin, Sister Wilhemina Lancaster's body appeared remarkably well preserved. The news spread quickly on social media, and now hundreds of pilgrims are flocking to the monastery in rural Missouri. Now we go now to Kelsey Wicks, Executive Director of EWTN's Aussie Group, who has been following this story from the very beginning. Kelsey, great to have you back on. First off, tell us a little bit more about Sister Wilhemina.
Well, Sister Wilhemina Lancaster is the foundress of the Benedictine Sisters of Mary, Queen of the Apostles in Gower, Missouri. It's a thriving religious community, probably best known for their chart-topping Gregorian albums, Gregorian chant albums. But she was born the second of 5 children in St. Louis, Missouri. And at a young age, 13 reportedly, according to her biography, she wrote a letter to the Oblate Sisters of Providence requesting to enter the order. This is after a sort of experience that she had during her first Holy Communion, where Jesus invited her to be his. So she spent 75 years in religious life under vows and died at the age of 95 just 4 years ago.
Well, and I know that you visited the monastery soon after the body was exhumed. What was the scene like there?
Well, you know, it was so interesting. There were hundreds of people, by my estimation, about 100 that I saw in just the couple hours that I was there, milling their way through. They were bringing rosaries. They were coming to pay respects to Sister, to pray at her body, which was laid out on a dower. It was really impressive to see the silence and the prayer. Perhaps the more extraordinary thing was to see the sisters just sort of caring about the monastic rhythm of their life, with as though this was the most ordinary thing, to have hundreds of pilgrims just coming into their chapel, paying respects to the sister who founded them, while they sang the praises of God. So it was a really remarkable experience. Even the brand name of her sock was visible and had not decayed.
Wow, this really is a fascinating story. I'm curious, what's been the impact of this story on the community? We understand, as we talked about, hundreds of pilgrims are flocking there.
Yes, I think the number actually, the latest that I've heard, Tracy, is now in the thousands. And the sisters are turning down media requests and accepting media requests every day. It's become a sort of national news phenomenon. Newsweek and New York Post have picked up the story. Everyone is just really curious to know, what is this thing that Catholics are saying is a sign of the miraculous, and what does it point to? It's really fascinated the American public at this point. The Kansas City Star has gone up to see what's happening, and locals, as well as people from a great distance. When I was there, I spoke with people from Kentucky, from Illinois, from Kansas, from Missouri. They're coming from all parts of the Midwest to be able to pay their respects and understand what's happening.
Yeah, it really is remarkable. What else can you tell us about all this and what's happening?
Yeah, right now what we know is, of course, there are a lot of questions about what does it mean to have a quote unquote incorrupt body. So there's a lengthy investigation process that the church is going to undertake. The bishop has asked the faithful to sort of reserve judgment on the miraculous while things are being investigated. And of course, as Catholics, we trust that there's a process that we can go through wherein the church can solidify our understanding of what's happening. But in the meantime, what's happening is that people are just being inspired by her life. I mean, she was so devoted to the habit, and the habit is actually perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of this. The veil, which adorns her head, is actually made of the same material as the lining of the coffin, and that decayed and the veil did not, So there seems to be, according to the people that I interviewed, the abbess and some of the faithful, there seems to be some sort of tribute that maybe God is speaking through the preservation of this habit as to what it means to be a bride of Christ, and the beauty of those signs of religious life that she was so faithful to through 75 years of life.
Well, Kelsey, it really is a remarkable and beautiful story, and thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about it. We appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you so much. Let me just add one last thing, Tracy. The foundress, the sister, the abbess, actually mentioned that this is a great sign of hope in the afterlife. So to take a look at, what does it mean? That life doesn't end, and we as Catholics already know that as a matter of church teaching. We don't need miracles to prove it. That this life is not all there is.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Kelsey. We appreciate that. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night, and God bless.